Sup, everybody?
Greetings, traveler.
Someday I'll be just like you!
What to do? What to do?
Such big teeth I have. Such big teeth I have. To my side. A battle to eat you with. A battle to eat you with.
Everybody, Dustin from DC Media. So you guys have been asking for some time for me to talk about AMD's Ryzen and Vega. Well, let's talk about it. So there's already been a little bit of leaked information after the end of last month. AMD's year-end, Q4 of last year's release. Here's a slide for it right here. It actually shows that Ryzen is supposed to be coming out in March and Vega is coming out in Q2. And if you're looking for Naples, which is the server version of Ryzen, it will also be in Q2 of this year, supposedly. Now, we all know AMD likes to change their minds, so we'll just have to play it by ear. Now, I don't think Ryzen's going to change. I think we're going to see 5 SKUs coming out in March. You know, we already seen all of the motherboards and whatnot at CES. Well, not all, but plenty. You know, so to let us know that there is definitely a finished product out there, because I believe those were completely finished and finalized products ready for consumer consumptions, consumer purchases. So I think that we're definitely going to be seeing. I don't think they're going to change it. I think we're going to see a couple of their higher end Summit Ridge, which is what they've been talking about the most, and we might even see something as low as a 4-core 4-thread, 4-core 8-thread. Things in a 6-core 6-thread, things along those lines. I think that's going to be some differentiating factors in their price points and how they're going to market their CPUs. I don't think clock speeds are going to be all that different across the board, but pricing will be, and it's going to be priced according to number of threads. Like a 4-core 4-thread, probably going to go after the i3s. 4-core 8-thread will probably be the i5s, and so forth. And 6.6 is going to be the i7. You know, 612 will be high end. So with that being said, what do we really expect? Well, Paul's Hardware did a really good video over what we could expect price point, and I actually agree with pretty much everything he said. I don't really disagree with anything. So I'll have that video linked in the description below if you guys haven't seen it already. Be sure to check it out. The price points that he's suggesting fall, you know, put them just below, you know, maybe, you know, $75 below their counterpart on Intel side. And I think that's probably a pretty market strategy on AMD's side. And it's going to force Intel to drop their prices considerably. You know, $50 here, $100 there, depending on which side of the bracket you're on. And if they come out, if Summit Ridge and that comes out as hard as we think it's going to, and it's going to put that big of a stress on Intel, we're likely going to see Intel start talking about the X299 platform, you know, the Enthusiast platform, which is due out this year. So I think that's pretty much a lock. I think we're going to see something in Q2 probably being talked about for X299, which is going to, you know, put maybe we'll see something at the end of the year or something along those lines. But we're definitely going to see some talk about that in Q2. I don't think we're going to see it before that, since at the end of Q3 we're going to see the Ryzen launch. Now the Vega launch in the same slide is showing Q2 of 2017. April, May, and June is Q2. So we still got some time waiting for Vega. And with Vega, we don't know as much as we do with Ryzen. Ryzen, we're pretty much all on the same page of what we expect. Yeah, we all think AMD hyped it up just a little bit. I don't think we're going to get that crazy of performance scale, but I think it's going to be right there neck and neck with the current Intel offerings from Kaby Lake. So they're going to be right there where they need to be, and hopefully they can continue to push that moving forward into 2018. But on the Vega side, we don't really know a lot. Yes, we know a little bit about the architecture and HBM2, which I think is going to be just about Vega 10, which is the only GPU that we've even seen. If you've watched Linus's videos, he got the chance to take off the side panel of the case and actually see the Vega 10 card while he was at CES. Now, we've seen Vega 10 running on 4K resolution on Doom, putting up FPS numbers roughly about 8 to 10% better than what we were seeing from most of the counterparts from Intel and NVIDIA. So at CES, they were saying that there was, the comparable Intel CPU on probably a stock cooler would be my guess, and a GTX 1080, and then they're running that at 4K with the same settings as the Ryzen Summit Ridge CPU and a Vega 10, and is about 10% better. So some of that could be CPU, some of that could be GPU. The percentage of each, we don't know. We do know at 4K, most of the load is handled by the GPU. So reason to believe that a lot of that performance boost is the GPU is pretty understandable and pretty accepted. But we're not entirely sure. And how's it going to perform whenever it's in our hands and we're actually getting it tested, or another reviewer's hands? We don't know. At least not in the official terminology. But with that being said, there's not really a lot more to talk about. We've all seen all of the other reviews or leaked specifications or hypes and hopes, or the wait for Ryzen memes, which, hey, at the end of next month, we won't have that no more. However, we'll probably have wait for Vega, things going on. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. You know, I think it's going to be a great addition to the CPU market in March. I think we're going to see a lot of things change price point wise, and it's going to push Intel. And that's all that we can hope for, to get AMD back on par with Intel, the best that they can be, and to kind of push Intel to be more innovative and to stop dragging their feet and raising the prices like they have been. And then on the graphics card side, honestly, AMD hasn't been that far behind necessarily at all times. They just pick and choose when they release some stuff. So I think Vega 10 being the architecture that we expected from NVIDIA to some extent, using HBM2 and such, I think we're going to see that, and it's going to push NVIDIA. I think we're going to see the new NVIDIA graphics cards come a little bit sooner than we might have seen them otherwise. And of course, we're going to see the 1080 Ti come out shortly after that. So, but again, that's all speculation. My thought, wait for Ryzen if you're building a CPU right now, see what happens in March. And as for Vega, well, it's still a long ways off. I wouldn't hold your breath, I wouldn't wait. It might get pushed back again. But again, guys, thanks for watching the video, and hey, if you like it, give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and again, be sure to check out Paul's video in the link to the description below. And if you guys have any questions or comments, comment section's down there, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
On the 31st of January, AMD held their Q4 2016 earnings call. During the event, Lisa Su confirmed that Ryzen will be launched in early March. Based on this, the GDC leak we talked about last week is looking pretty legitimate now, and thus Ryzen could indeed be released prior to the 3rd of March, but that's just a speculation. And there's still no talk on the lineup or prices, and this is where the official stuff ends. And so, another leak has surfaced on overclock.net. This time it shows the entire lineup of Ryzen, specifically the clock speeds, core count, and official naming scheme, but yet again no pricing. Based on this, they're going for a similar naming scheme to Intel's 3s, 5s, and 7s, but instead of an I, we have an R. I personally hope this is not the case, and to an extent I do not think they would go with this naming scheme. Although AMD are notorious for terrible naming schemes, I'm hard pressed to agree with Adore TV here. The X4, X6, and X8 naming scheme, similar to the Athlon lineup, fits way better. Branding is very important. Having a successful brand name is essential. Most people will buy something because it's famous or well known. You can even test it on yourself. Ask yourself, would you buy a BMW or a Hyundai, a Mercedes or a Toyota? Price aside, there is a strength in the name. If someone would ask you what do you drive, if you answer a Mercedes, that sounds much better than saying a Hyundai, regardless of how much Hyundai has improved in the past decade, and on how they are one of the best selling brands currently, and how much you get for your money if you go with the Korean Hyundai side. A testament to this is Toyota. The word Toyota instantly reminds you of a Corolla or a Prius. Boring, hand-me-down, college debt, first time in second base. Toyota was never going to get away with a luxury upmarket car with their brand name. They tried it with the Toyota Cressida and that didn't work, although that was a damn great car. But anyway, in 1989 they unearthed the Lexus brand name. Just say it, Lexus. It rolls off the tongue, it sounds fancy. Sounds like it has a rich history, even though the brand is only 28 years old, compared to say Mercedes, which made the first car in 1885. Lexus sold like hotcakes on its inception with the Lexus LS400, and it paved the way to a successful brand. I can easily go all day comparing brand names because it applies to everything, but you get the idea. I personally am immune to marketing and the urge to look cool by owning a certain product, but most people aren't, and from a business standpoint, the smart approach is to build your brand with a catchy name that sticks to cater to those people. Let's get a bit more technical now and look at whatever is there than that shitty branding. This is a fairly expected and typical lineup. For each segment we have a standard version, a pro version, and an X version, and it would be nonsensical to have a normal version that is faster than the pro version, which is why I think this table is sorted incorrectly at some points. As expected, at the bottom of the lineup we find the R3, which consists of true quad cores, hopefully for the price of the usual i3s, which are dual cores with hyper-threading enabled. Going up, we find the R5 lineup, which consists of quad cores with SMT enabled. Going even further, we reach the 6-core 12-threaded variants. The R5 is set to compete with Intel's i5. To match up with the i7s, we have the R7 lineup, which will give you 8 cores and 16 threads all around. Those R7 CPUs go gradually from competing with the run-of-the-mill i7 all the way up to the 6900K. However, didn't Lisa Su confirm that the base clock for Ryzen was 3.4? This doesn't apply here. These clocks are way too low to compete with Intel, especially on the low end. You're not going to do anything versus an i3 that has been pumping weights at 4.2 GHz, especially with Skylake IPC. As with every video, sources and links are in the video description. On a final note, it's easy to flaw this supposed leak and put more holes in it than a Russian in a Call of Duty game. It seems to me like an effort to stir up the pot and nothing more, but I could be mistaken. Anyway, remember to take this leak with an extra bit of salt. In fact, I suggest amounts of salt higher than that of a Virtus Pro fan after the E-Leak 2017 CSGO Major.
There are two interesting news stories that have popped up in the past couple of hours, probably 24 I'd say, well, less than 24, 12 maybe. The first one's AMD CPU lineup that had been leaked, and it shows the details on AMD's up-and-coming Ryzen CPU lineup. 17 SKUs in base clock frequencies that range from 3.0 GHz to 3.6 GHz. The 3.6 GHz isn't too mind-blowing, considering let's face it, the 4790K is based at 4. These leaks came from Cooler.com and showcase a wide range of CPU models and their nearest Intel competitors. Right now, it's unknown if these GPUs are supposed to be performance competitors or price competitors, or a mixture of both, with the 8-core CPUs being listed as competitors for both Intel's 8-core 7900K and their 4-core 8-thread 7700K. As I already said, right now the specifications of these CPUs are not really known apart from the base clock's speed range and each core thread count, with AMD's new CPU being separated into the R7, the R5, and the R3 series CPUs, with a naming scheme reminiscent of Intel's Core i series. AMD's R7 series CPUs are listed as 8 cores and 16 threads, with the R5 CPUs having either a 4 or 6 core configuration with SMT enabled. AMD's lower R3 series CPUs will have 4 cores and 4 threads SMT disabled. In this leak, there are no pricing informations for AMD's Ryzen CPUs, though it is likely they will be hearing more from AMD within the next few weeks. As we already know, the Ryzen chips will launch very, very soon. Now, what makes this leak kind of confusing is the simple fact that I'm pretty sure AMD put it out that they were not doing 6-core CPUs, which I felt would be a huge blunder on their part, simply because maybe people don't want to go with the 8-core 16-thread count. And this is all saying that all the 8 cores have 16-thread counts, which is really odd considering I'm pretty sure the last leak that popped up, it showed 8-core 8-thread counts and 8-core 16-thread counts to kind of distinguish them from one another. At this point, it almost makes you wonder, how much of a difference are we going to see between the R1700 to the R1800X when everything in this lineup is an 8-core 16-thread count, and the variation of base frequencies and boost frequencies, or we're just going to say base frequencies right now, is 3 to 3.6 gigahertz. I'm going to make a wild guess and say that the base frequency would probably be 3 gigahertz, and most likely the X version is going to be the one that's 3.6 gigahertz. I'm just taking a wild guess here, kind of following the whole Intel approach to things quite often with the K series versus the non-K series. Now, the next one is quite interesting. I don't know if it's true, but there could possibly be some sort of credence to it. Back in December, several rumors have come to light, which claims that Intel has come into an agreement with AMD to use Radeon's iGPUs to power future Intel CPUs. These rumors come from Hard OCP's Kyle Bennett, who in May reported that AMD's Radeon Technology Group, RTG, was in talks with Intel about supplying graphics IPs for future CPUs. At the time, this rumor is discounted by most people who thought it seemed that Intel's graphics division had been significantly downsized since the announcement an 11% reduction in their workforce back in April. Rumor has it that Intel may release their first Intel GPU with an integrated AMD GPU in the late 2017, with CPU using a separate Intel CPU die and an AMD GPU die. This effort will save Intel a lot of money, which it spent on GPU and R&D, and will give AMD some additional GPU market shares in consumer systems, all in one making this a clever move for both companies. Back in December, Kyle reappeared on the Hard OCP forums with a new message stating that both companies have come to an agreement and that AMD's GPU tech will be used in future Intel integrated graphics solutions. And I quote, "The license deal between AMD and Intel is signed and done for putting AMD GPU tech into Intel's iGPU. Intel will in no way want this to be public." What? Whoa. That would be weird, right? I mean, I guess it would be like, I don't know, I guess it could be somewhat scandalous. But on the other hand, I don't see what the big issue is. But then again, that could show that there's some sort of weakness or flaw in Intel, and they're admitting that AMD has something on the ball. To anyone in the hardware world, this report comes as a massive shock, given how AMD and Intel have been huge competitors in the GPU market for decades. This deal is almost like cats and dogs suddenly becoming friends. While the agreement between such fierce competitors may seem like an impossibility, both companies do have a lot to offer each other, with Intel looking to cheaply develop integrated graphics solutions and AMD's desire to return to a profitable and generate additional revenue from licensing deals. Right now, Intel does not offer powerful graphics hardware on their CPUs, with Intel's flagship Skylake 6700K failing to beat AMD's aging A10 7890K APU under the GPU-intensive loads. With recent rumors suggesting that AMD's first Zen-based APUs will deliver GPU performance that is similar to an RX 460, it looks like Intel may have a difficult time competing, especially given the recent layoffs in their GPU division. AMD has also recently made deals with Chinese competitors, giving them access to some of their CPU and IPUs to allow them to manufacture their own AMD-based CPUs this generation, $293 million for the company in cash.